Falcon 9 left orbit in 2015 is going to hit the moon on March 4th. Falcon 9 has a long history of successful launches. Suppose you're getting to know about SpaceX and its myriad of projects. You might be unaware of a previous mission of theirs that has yielded a surprising turn of events. Lately, all of Falcon 9's recent expeditions suit the establishment of SpaceX's internet constellation. If that's all you know, you might be having a bit of a knowledge gap. Has there been a bigger mission you didn't know that the Falcon 9 rocket has been used for in recent times? What kind of impact is Falcon 9 having on the moon? Stay tuned to get all answers to your questions. Welcome to your favorite channel, Unlimited SpaceX. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more exciting news about SpaceX projects and Elon Musk's many controversies. According to the launch date, the Falcon 9 rocket's arrival seems long overdue for arrival at its destination unless something happened. This video will discuss the details of the supposed mission and why it so happens that the rocket is just reaching the moon. How far is the distance between the moon and Earth? 384,400 kilometers. Not that far, we agree. It shouldn't take as much as a year, even if we launched the slowest rocket in existence. This Falcon 9 rocket took 7 years from its launch to reach the moon? It's unthinkable. There may be certain excusable conditions that could warrant this event. It has never happened in the history of space travel, which makes this a curious case. Rockets travel in a vacuum at a specific speed, and angle in their movements are often in a unidimensional sort of way. They cannot change directions nor get out of the path of anything that is on a collision course with them. Forget what indelible marks sci-fi space action movies have imprinted in our minds with their fancy spacecraft and rocket technology. We're not there yet, and we cannot wish such technical capabilities into existence for our rockets. It seems like the SpaceX rocket was returning after a long time deep in space. It had probably been moving at the wiles of the sun's gravitational pull for over 7 years. It seems to have finally come around to Earth, or so it was thought. The return to the moon is not with the kind of fanfare you imagine. It's no fanfare at all. The rocket appears to be hurtling through space at vacuum warping speed. What is the story behind this rocket? Thanks for asking. As you know, SpaceX launched the rocket 7 years ago, back in February 2015. Its destination? SpaceX did not initially build it for the moon. SpaceX is not purposefully aimed for any project to the moon. It wasn't until their recent partnership with NASA on a contract to build the Starship moonlander. American astronauts will use the spacecraft to explore the moon for scientific purposes. The Falcon 9 rocket, both the new and old versions, have been chiefly used for one purpose alone, for launching satellites. This particular rocket stays true to that original narrative as it was sent into orbit for a special mission. It was one of the early interplanetary missions that Falcon 9 embarked on following its developments before the beginning of anything related to Starlink. It was a durable piece designed to go on a complete journey of about 1 million miles while carrying space weather satellite. It explains a lot about where it could have gone. A space weather satellite almost naturally has to be located in a vantage position in the solar system. But who would have thought that SpaceX had built a rocket that could go to that extent successfully? Maybe it didn't do much to return, but it was a mission accomplished. So why didn't it return? The only reason that comes to mind is the case of an engine burn. That's the only thing that can make this accomplished piece of technology fail to return to its launch base. If it made it there, it was always possible to produce if it all went well. It is just a little unfortunate that things turned out the way they did. It successfully delivered a deep space climate observatory satellite belonging to NOAA at the Lagrange point in the solar system. How much further from Earth is the Lagrange point compared to the moon? The distance is about 4 times the distance between the moon and Earth. Putting pen to paper, that is 4 times 380,000 kilometers. It means the rocket traveled over 1.52 million kilometers to fulfill its position. The point in the solar system is a gravity-neutral position. It is at a reasonably safe distance from the sun's gravitational effect, but close enough to observe the entire weather condition of the solar system. The second stage of the rocket became obsolete shortly after accompanying its mission. The engines giving out meant that the rocket could not self-propel back at the right angle to travel back into Earth's orbit and attempt a re-entry into our atmosphere. Unlike other Falcon 9 rockets that SpaceX could salvage and reuse, this one is a pretty foregone conclusion. A lack of fuel could very well be why its engines gave out. Maybe if it had more power, but it could still have made it back successfully despite the height it had reached. A lack of energy must have kept it from escaping the intense gravity in Earth's orbit. It sure hasn't had a pleasant time floating around space with no particular direction. It is now the piece of space junk that has caught the interest of the space industry. After a long hiatus, it has decided to visit the moon instead of coming back to Earth. We think SpaceX would be welcoming it back with open arms, although its re-entry would be entirely uncontrolled and quite chaotic. We believe it's better that it was not hurtling towards Earth at its current speed. What do you think would happen if it re-entered the Earth's atmosphere uncontrollably? According to its original data, it was a little over 4 metric tons, or whatever's left of it would just be about that, as it doesn't appear to have even lost the slightest part of it. It also shows that it had luckily escaped a collision with another spatial body until now. The acceleration at which it was propelling itself is also assumed to be about 2.58 kilometers per second. That speed might seem pretty slow due to the gravitational pull of the sun, but if any object were to be moving at that rate here on Earth, it'd be at neck-breaking speed. It has gotten this close in a few weeks. A noted group of scientists tasked with recording the appearance of any object or spatial body like comets, asteroids, satellites, and other pieces of space junk. They predict that the rocket will hit the moon latest by March 4th. Given that we know little about such measurements in space, we cannot debate the likelihood of this rocket's collision with the moon and its timeline. There's no one to blame for this occurrence, and we can only begin to think about the repercussion of the collision. First, the rocket would meet a most crushing end, and the moon would have a deep crater filled with metallic space junk embedded in its surface. It'd be much easier for scientists to determine the kind of damage it can inflict if they could guess where there'll be an impact on the moon. The rocket is not exactly moving in the manner that it would if it still had power. It is flailing desperately and rotating as the sun seems to be pushing heavily on it through space. Hence, its orbit is hard to discern at this time. The closer it gets, the easier it'll be to consider the rotations. We can calculate and determine just how and where it'll hit the moon. Will the moon be cracked and splintered across its core? A weird question, but that would only be a concern if an enormous spaceship like Armada crashed into the moon or drills a hole in it with a power laser technology. The rocket is nowhere near large enough to deal any crushing damage to the moon. The impact would be negligible. What's the worst thing you could think could happen to the moon? Suppose left to the minds of conspiracy theorists to deduce what could happen to the moon. They'd say that we should be ready for an irregularly shaped moon if the rocket crashes and tears off a part of it. If it manages to crack the moon in half and one part falls away, we would forever be left with a half moon to grace our skies, or maybe 2 half moons. Let's all go to that speculation. See you in the following video.